Thanks for joining us for another special edition of Take Two Campaign 2024. We are a week out from the November election. Joining me is Bill Campbell with Congressional District 1. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Heidi, for the opportunity, and KUTV.
Glad to have you in here. This is not your first time running. You've run before and you switched teams. Tell me a little bit about what happened in the last few years to make that happen.
Yes, I spent the majority of my life in business as a CFO. 2 years ago, I decided to run to try to get involved in the politics, make more of a national scene. I ran as a Republican because first and foremost, I'm a financial conservative. I ran as a Republican. I think I established my conservative credentials very well, but I ended up losing at the convention. They ended up preferring someone much farther right, much stronger.
Yeah, the parties sometimes go to the extreme right or the left when you're at the convention caucus system.
Yeah, I try not to use the word extreme, but definitely farther right. And one of the positions I believe may have hurt me is I did not pledge to fully support all Republican candidates and support all Republican principles. Just like in this case, I pledged to vote for the best people and the best policies, not vote straight ticket.
Well, let's go into some of those policies then.
Yes.
Right now. When you look at the most recent surveys of Americans and specifically even Utahns, what their most important issues, they all evolve around the economy right now. So if you were elected to Congress, what could you do to get the economy headed in a better direction where families are feeling like they have a little more wiggle room and things are better? I know inflation's going down, but it's taken a long time to get down.
Inflation's going down, but it started up at a high level and it's just increasing at a slower pace. It's still a big stress for the families. So yes, inflation, debt, deficits, and even good jobs these days at well-paying rates. I believe I'm definitely the best prepared for that because again, I'm a CPA, certified public accountant. I have my MBA at Utah State, and I served as over 20 years as the CFO for Autoleave, a company that started here back in the late 80s with only 50 employees, and we grew to over 10,000. And we did based upon the workforce, the skill set, the way businesses run, and giving people the opportunity that they wanted.
So how do you translate what you have from the private sector into Congress and trying to make a difference there? Because two different monsters.
Two definitely different monsters. And on the business side, you get the chance to feel the impact that the policies and the legislation's actually causing at the local level, not just in business, but in the charities and communities that I work with. Personally, from our experience at Autoleave, we would prefer if the government was less involved. The business, with the ideas, with the innovation, with the creativity we have here, with all the new innovations out there, with the culture and the work-life balance, Utah is a fantastic place for any business and for anyone to live. If anything, we need to stop the government from getting involved because unfortunately as well, Utah only has 1% of the nation's population, or essentially 1% of the support and the power in DC. States like California have 9 times. So anytime the government gets involved in influencing decisions and helping support businesses, we often don't have our voices heard.
So how do you cut that federal involvement? Is it through deregulation? Do you cut the scope or the percent if you go into each body of the federal government and cut some of those jobs? What would you do to take some of that away?
With all the positives we have out here, including on a global level, we don't need any advantages. We don't need the government to go in there and create advantages and give us more incentives. All we need here in Utah is a level playing field. That if we don't have to compete against companies in other states that get special earmarks and special government grants, and if we can compete internationally against the companies that aren't getting any unfair advantages, just with our work ethic here, just with our talent that you get for the value, for the wages, and just with the inspiration, the ethics that our workforce has, this is an excellent place to work. So respectfully, we don't need anything from the federal government except stop creating disadvantages for us.
I believe that the Biden administration brought in some chip makers from overseas. Some of those are here in Utah. I believe there was tax incentives to get them moving here to the U.S. as opposed to other countries. Was that the right move, or would you say no incentives like that?
I do believe in localization because I want to reduce the trade deficits. We have about a $70 billion a month trade deficit, and the CHIPS Act has the right intent. We want to localize it because chips are essential for our economy, for our way of life. Where I believe the government went wrong is them picking the individual winners. who gets the money, who gets those incentives. I would have preferred if we had created a level playing field, and I personally believe we wouldn't have received less money here in Utah because we have excellent companies here. On a level playing field, we would have performed better. So yes, localize, but don't pick winners and losers at the government level.
Let's talk about the budget. Congress has one big job, and it's the budget. And oftentimes it gets to the very last second. We get to continuing resolutions, which was voted on. At this point, they have until December 20th to make a decision, or it gets kicked into the new Congress in the new year. If you had been in Congress, would you have voted for that continuing resolution, shut down the government? What would your vote be?
You don't want to shut down the government. So given the choice that they had, I do believe we should have negotiated for better and for more. Because right now we didn't get anything out of it. All they did was push everything back. And the only persons benefiting from our $2 trillion a year deficit are the special interests that are getting the money and everyone that wants to keep everything exactly the way it is. But between myself and most Utahns, we're not headed in the right direction. We need to change the direction so to have any politician come up and say, we only have two options. We'd either shut down the government or continue to do everything the way we wanted to. No, we should have never gotten in that choice. We only had two options. We should have created the third option. Let's get done everything everyone promised on the campaign trail and make that happen.
How do you make that happen? Because it's easy to campaign and say that you're going to cut the budget or get it done sooner. The House has done a good job at passing portions of the budget. The Senate went for the omnibus option. How do you make that change as one person, one congressional member going in?
Yes, and obviously it's working everyone with the different interests. Everyone has different special interests in various items they're trying to go for. I do not. I have not accepted any donations because I don't want any undue influences on my decision-making processes. And people are struggling financially. I want them to keep their own money. So what you need to do is you need to go basically on the principles. And you put the good principles out there, and you challenge people to go against the principles and have to show whether or not they're going against principle or their special interest. And the more we can make that transparent, including the spending and what's happening, the better we can increase the visibility, the easier it'll be for people to do the right thing, and the harder it'll be for them to be biased in the decisions.
Social Security, not a popular thing to talk about cutting or changing, but in the next 10 years it won't be solvent, and that means that people start getting cuts to their paycheck. If you were in Congress, what would you push for with change? Because something has to give.
Yes, something has to give. It's just a matter of years before we start running the deficit along those lines. One of the big differences between myself and my opponent is I believe we should be negotiating drug pricing and the services associated with Social Security. He has his PAC, special interests in pharmaceutical insurance companies.
That would be more Medicaid and Medicare though, right? Not Social Security?
Yes, but eventually the funds are kind of combined. I know there's a separate Social Security trust fund, but ultimately it's part of making all of those programs solvent. So I support what we've done so far in terms of the retirement age. I believe people are gradually working a little bit longer. So I would encourage a gradual increase in the retirement age, but nothing for anyone already retired or anyone near retirement.
What age would you say?
I believe it's reasonable to go to 70 on a more rapid basis over time. Not in the near future, but graduated over time.
Switching to energy, it has a lot to do with the economy and making sure that people can afford when you talk about filling up your gas tank or having the energy for your home, gas, electricity. What is the right way forward for our country right now and making sure that we have the energy we need to sustain the growth that we have?
Yes, I'm a believer in all of the above energy policy. Right now I want to support green energy. I want to support the renewables because they are the future. They're just not economically feasible now, and we don't have the capability from those systems. So we should support those efforts to increase the energy supply and capability, which will ultimately lower inflation. But we should have never decreased the supply and the output of the fossil fuels and the carbons until that capacity was online. And I do believe one of the general improvements we need to make is improving the permitting process, both for carbon-based and for green energy. So when someone comes up with the new ideas, the hydrogen plant down in the southern part of the state, the nuclear considerations that we have as well, to be able to progress those faster. There's a lot of fantastic ideas out there, and it's getting caught in the government red tape. So improve the permitting process, all of the above solutions, but don't take anything away until we have the supplying capability.
Nuclear is controversial. People like the idea of how much it could give us and that it could be clean, but they also think about some of the problems, or Fukushima, some of the problems that could come with it, because there's always a concern with that. Which way do you go on that?
Yes, there have been concerns and issues in the past. Fukushima after the earthquake, 3 Mile Island. People's concerns are valid because that's still refreshed in their memory. But the technology has definitely improved, so it's safer. And I believe if we make the proper precautions, we can significantly reduce the risk even further. We'll never be able to completely avoid the risk, but if you compare it against the risk of, say, clean air with some of the fossil fuels, or the cost of inflation with the other ones, it's a very feasible, practical consideration.
Switching to immigration, there are many different issues that come with that when you're talking about the U.S.-Mexico border and just the overall immigration system that is very slow and cumbersome for families that do want to come to the U.S. legally. How would you change that, and what would you be pushing Congress if you were trying to get others on your side to maybe make some changes and get something on the books?
Yes, I am 100% behind following the proper immigration laws and bringing those immigrants in. Anyone that goes through the effort and wants to become a long-term citizen, we should welcome them. I am against, though, what's currently been happening at the southern border. It's been a travesty. We need to better secure the border because there are a number of problems that occur, not just for the Americans and the economy and the healthcare and what's happening in the schools, but just also for the immigrants. Unless we provide a better way to assimilate them in the economy, unless we give them visas so they can start to work and have jobs, unless we start to give them the proper education to go through, it's not the best solution for everyone. So, update the immigration laws in terms of a more defined, definitive, predictable path for the immigrants, especially in any of the services that we're currently lacking, because we do need more jobs in certain areas. Until then, though, we definitely need to better secure the southern border.
And how is the best way to secure it? Is building the wall the right answer? Do we need more officers down there? Which direction would you go?
There's a long border between us and Mexico, and unfortunately I don't believe there's one solution that encompasses the entire border. There are sections in which I believe the wall would be best. Electronic surveillance in some areas, and the high traffic routes, I do believe we need to increase the manpower there.
Best way to fix it right now, is it through executive order as we've seen through the last couple of presidencies, or does Congress need to act?
Congress needs to act. We should have acted. We had the chance, and quite frankly, I believe some politicians play politics as opposed to protecting and securing the country. That too was a travesty. We should have passed the improvement when we had the chance back then. Until then, we need to secure the border because we have so many people here we need to assimilate and take in, and it's been overwhelming our healthcare system, the education system, and other items, and we need to absorb that. And I do believe for anyone committing the felonies or doing wrongs, anyone not following the guidelines when they came across, we do need to start deporting them.
Switching gears to overseas, a lot of money's been going to Ukraine right now, and I think some Americans are getting a little tired looking at the money, wondering when it's going to end, how much needs to be sent to keep the world in a safe place, because we're all part of this world. Would you keep spending in Ukraine, or is there a different direction you would go?
Ukraine is an ally. We need to support our allies. Russia is the aggressor. We need to stop global aggressors. That stated, my position differs from the incumbent in terms of the extent. I don't believe the way we have spent $175 billion and the way we're currently committing to continue to fund them and give them more and more money, I don't believe that is the right solution. So there are smaller ways in which we can support them, and I would take the savings and I would go to my platform's Priority U. One of the U's involve USA, helping our border security, we discussed, our healthcare system, our schools, our environment. Because it's one thing to be on the right side. The second question, though, is to what extent and what is the best way to help. And I don't believe the way we're currently helping is optimal.
Americans are also divided right now over the ongoing situation with Israel and Hamas in Palestine. What is the answer there? If you were in Congress, what would you be seeking as a resolution?
Okay. First, I do support the efforts to try to tone down the activities until we can negotiate a better peace. October 7th a year ago was a travesty, and I believe Israel does have a right to defend itself along those lines, and especially going after and trying to secure recovery of the hostages. So I fully supported those efforts. I do wish we were much more strategic, or they were much more strategic, in terms of how they went about it. The mass bombings in the area, as opposed to some of the recent strategic precision activities.
Like the phones?
Like the phones, yes. Personally, I thought that was brilliant with the pagers and the phones to identify where they were, and then only the persons that had them as part of that activity, that they knew where they were impacted by those activities. Those are a much better strategic precision, and I have to give them credit, very intelligent response.
Unfortunately, we don't have all day, and there's so many issues to get through. If people want to know more about you, your campaign, where do they go online to find you? And do you have any other events in the next week before the election comes?
There's several more events, but probably the best place to go is the website. It's bill4u.org, BILL, the number 4, the letter U.org.
All right, we will put that link on there. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of the conversation.
Thank you. And thank KUTV.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Heidi.